Welcome into Falcons Today. Matthew Peterson here, running through 5 cut candidates for the Falcons to free up $20 million in additional cap space for free agency next month. Now, let's just set the scene for a moment here. The Falcons' current cap space with a projected salary cap of $242 million is $25 million right now. So $25 million can definitely get you 2, maybe even 3 starting caliber players in free agency. But if Atlanta wants to free up an extra $20 million, well, let's run through 5 cut candidates to make that happen. Starting with quarterback Taylor Heinicke. This one seems like a bit of an obvious one, right? I would be very, very, very surprised if Taylor Heinicke is still on this roster for 2024. He comes off a season when he appeared in 5 games for the Falcons. He provided no spark offensively, came off the bench, started a week or two. Didn't really matter what the situation was. They never got that boost from Heinicke, despite it being a homecoming for him coming back to his hometown Falcons. Now, if Atlanta moves on from Taylor Heinicke with a pre-June 1 trade or release, because I could see Atlanta finding a trade destination for him for like a Justin Fields swap potentially to help the Bears get a new backup QB for maybe Caleb Williams. Well, he's got an $8.5 million cap hit. $2 million in dead cap, right? That's money that's devoted to players not on your roster. That's not a very big number. $6.5 million in cap savings. So does Atlanta really want to have an $8.5 million cap hit for a guy that's backup quarterback on this team? Highly unlikely, right? Sure, Atlanta does not have they have the worst quarterback room in the NFL. Let's just call it what it is. But I don't see a way Taylor Heinicke returns next year with that cap hit. And I don't think the Falcons are interested in making a new contract for him. It's a new head coach that didn't sign Taylor Heinicke. I ultimately think they are just going to move on from him altogether. Now, if they move on from Taylor Heinicke, their cap space goes up to $31.5 million. So all of a sudden, you got $31.5 million to spend. We're talking top 10-ish in cap space for 2024. Let's move on to the next cut candidate. Now, this one is not as a slam dunk as the first one, but it is tight end Jonnu Smith. Did not think he would be one of the most explosive players on the Falcons roster in 2023. That was not on my bingo card, but he definitely packed a punch. Like, he had some of their biggest plays offensively. 50 grabs, 582 yards, 3 touchdowns. He outshined Kyle Pitts for stretches this past season. Now, Jonnu Smith is an interesting cut candidate because he produced last year, right? For a backup tight end to get 582 yards and 3 touchdowns out of, that is by far exceeding expectations. And then when you factor in Atlanta's tight end room, which there's a little bit of uncertainty with Kyle Pitts in terms of whether or not he truly can be a clear-cut, dominant, elite tight end like you thought he would be at the 4th overall pick. But after Jonnu Smith, like Michael Pruitt is a free agent. Fitzpatrick is a guy that has had very little experience in the NFL so far. So there's a big drop-off after Kyle Pitts. So if Raheem Morris walks into that locker room and thinks, well, I don't really know what I have in Kyle Pitts. And I know that if I move on from Jonnu Smith, I've got no one after him. So do I want to rebuild my entire tight end room all to save $6.5 million? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe. I don't think this one's 50-50. I think it's like 60-40. The 60% being that the Falcons do move on from him. But at the same time, he was very productive for them last year. If they don't feel like they're going to find anyone better for what they're paying Jonnu Smith and they don't want to use draft capital for tight end, they may hold on to him. But if they feel like, you know what, new OC, new head coach, we've got our guys targeted, we can do a lot better at that tight end spot for a lot less, then yeah, they'd be dumb not to take the $6.5 million and run with it. So if they move on from Jonnu Smith and Taylor Heinicke, they are up to $38 million in cap savings. So now we've got some serious dough to spend. Like, if Atlanta's thinking spending big for a guy named Kirk Cousins, they're going to have to move on from some of these players to get additional cap space. Now, would you cut Jonnu Smith? I have seen comments going back and forth on this. He was good last year. Like, there's just no denying that. But I don't know if a new regime wants to hold on to a $9 million cap hit for a backup tight end. There might be some disagreements in the war room over that one. Moving on to our third cut candidate, it is outside linebacker Lorenzo Carter. Okay, let's talk about the former Georgia Bulldog. Day 2 pick to the New York Giants, came back to Atlanta, and Lorenzo Carter had a really good first year with the Falcons, but this past season was a bit of a drop-off, and that's putting it lightly. 35 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 fumbles recoveries. Those aren't bad numbers by any stretch, but Lorenzo Carter was paid to be a starting outside linebacker. And when you look at Atlanta's depth chart, he ain't a starter. Arnold Ebiketie took over that starting role. Bud Dupree, despite having a couple more years on him, took over a starting role over Lorenzo Carter, who I think Atlanta was more optimistic about Carter and Ebiketie being starters going into the year, and Bud Dupree just coming in for third downs. But ultimately, they couldn't trust Lorenzo Carter to play first, second, and third down, so they went with Bud Dupree for much of the year, and Carter came in for obvious passing situations. Now, let's say Atlanta wants to move on from Lorenzo Carter. Well, he's got a $4.7 million cap hit, only a $1 million dead cap hit, and that means $3.7 million in cap savings. So nearly $4 million in additional money to be added to the free agency piggy bank for a guy who played 81% of snaps in 2022 compared to, here's the snap count in 2023, he played 38%. So big drop-off from 81% in his first year with Atlanta to 38% this past season, almost cut in half. I could see the Falcons going, yeah, we're going to take that $4 million in savings and run with it. So they continue to make all these cuts. They are now up to $41.7 million in cap savings. Now, we're going to run through some more cut candidates in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you guys about an awesome deal still going on over at Fanatics, which is this Falcons t-shirt and hat combination. If you want to up your Falcons wardrobe a little bit, make sure you get on this deal right now because these sales in Fanatics, they kind of come and go. So if you want to get a new piece of Falcons merchandise in your closet, go to chatsports.com/ATL combo and use that link to get this Falcons t-shirt and hat on sale right now. Now, I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Cut candidate number 4, we're going to go with cornerback Mike Hughes. So the former first-round pick, believe it or not, by the Minnesota Vikings not too many years ago, has bounced around a little bit since then. His most recent stop was, of course, Atlanta, where he signed a 2-year contract. Now, I thought we would see more special teams out of Mike Hughes, and I was surprised to see that he did not play as much special teams this past season as I thought he would, and I thought he did. Now, when it comes to a move on from Mike Hughes, it's very cost-friendly to Atlanta. Only a $750,000 dead cap hit, so hardly any of your cap space going to a guy that's not on the roster, and $3-ish million in cap savings. So I think, again, when we look at a new defensive coordinator coming in that's been specialties in defensive backs, he may want to pick a free agent or two that he feels is a better fit for his system. Now, at the same time, when you look at Atlanta's cornerback room, Jeff Okudah is a free agent. I don't think they'll be bringing him back. He was benched at the end of the year. So if they don't want to make life more difficult for themselves, since Trey Flowers is also a free agent, and they don't think Clark Phillips is ready to start yet, they may very well hold on to Mike Hughes because $3 million in cap savings is nice, but it's not, life-changing money in terms of the NFL cap. They may hold on to him. That way they have a good backup plan. If a rookie or Clark Phillips is slated to start at CB2 and ultimately they discover early into training camp in the season, they're not ready for that kind of role. But as we continue on, if they do move on from Mr. Hughes, now they're up to nearly $45 million in cap savings. Or cap space, I should say. And that brings us to our 5th and final cut candidate. It is Desmond Ritter. Now, this one's an interesting one. Desmond Ritter is not on this list to save money like the other 4 guys. I think Desmond Ritter will actually stay with the Falcons as a backup, but I don't think it's blasphemy to suggest Atlanta might move on from Desmond Ritter and bring in a whole new quarterback room since last year's was such an abomination, right? At the same time, I've gone back and forth. Like, I'm not the biggest Desmond Ritter hater out there. I actually somewhat warmed up to him, as strange as that sounds, throughout the year, because I felt like Desmond Ritter made some really good, difficult throws. Just couldn't stop turning it over. Like, that's really what was the death of Desmond Ritter. The Panthers game, the interception, the 3 fumbles in the red zone against the Buccaneers. Like, if he just doesn't turn it over, I think Desmond Ritter's got a way different, public image of his stock right now. But turnovers are a very important part of the game. They are not something just to gloss over. And I think Atlanta, and I hope Atlanta, like the rest of the NFL learned last year, that you should not bank on your starting quarterback playing all 17 games. Half of the league lost their starter at some point. So it's good, not good. You must have a good backup plan at backup quarterback, or you can see your season go down the drain. So I could see Atlanta holding on to Desmond Ritter just as a backup in case the starter, whoever that might be, gets hurt next season. Because they know Ritter can come in and he can play some decent football as long as he's not turning the ball over. Now, there's really no cap savings to be had if you move on from Desmond Ritter, less than $1 million because he's so early into his rookie contract as a third-round pick. But if you do move on to Desmond Ritter, move on from him, along with the other 4 players we looked at, you got $45.6 million in cap space. That is up $20 million change from where you started with $25 million. So there are definitely some savings to be had if Atlanta wants to spend big in free agency. Those are 5 guys they can move on from to make some additional room to sign a big-name guy like a Danielle Hunter, a Kirk Cousins, a T. Higgins if he somehow hits the open market, a Michael Pittman, whoever it may be, and then some more along with it. Now, who do you want the Falcons to cut? Let me know down below in the comments section. We just ran through 5 names. Maybe it's someone I left off of my list, but give me your honest opinion down below. That will do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning into another edition of Falcons Today. We're going to sign off and see you all later.